Just thought I'd scare everybody so they could. All right, the afternoon meeting on Friday, March 16th of the LSU Board of Supervisors will come to order. Stephanie, please call the roll.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Ballard?
Here.
Mr. Anderson? Mr. Armentor?
Here.
Mr. Chatelain?
Here.
Ms. Duplessis? Mr. Jacobs? Ms. Johnson?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Mallett?
Here.
Mr. McCollister?
Here.
Mr. McCreary?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Ms. Werner?
Here.
Mr. Yarborough?
Here.
Chair, you have quorum.
All right, we have a quorum. We'll begin business. President Alexander, would you introduce your guest for today?
Sure.
I think you have some.
Where's Camille? I'd like to, our two students who are going to come forward, there's Camille, both Camille Faircloth and Camille Flint. They've both been very active on campus and student government, and you see them all over the place generally about every other day. So Camille Faircloth and Camille Flint, two of our students that will kick off the meeting today.
If you all would please stand for the invocation. Dear Lord, we seek blessings on the tasks before us. We gather together today intent on doing good work. We seek to represent fairly and well those who have given us this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom. We seek to serve with respect for all. May our personal faith give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters. Amen.
Amen.
All right, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you two would just tell a little bit just about yourself and all the things you've accomplished on campus.
Hi, like they said earlier, I'm Camille Faircloth, and to go and get out of the way, yes, I am Zach Faircloth's little sister. You're probably all familiar with him. He's doing well. He's in Dallas. So yeah, just to put that out of the way. For my LSU experience, it kind of started out as a culture shock. I'm from a really small town in central Louisiana. Mr. Blake can attest to that. And so coming to a campus of 30,000 people was really overwhelming. So my first semester, I wasn't really involved. And my second semester, my brother called me and said, hey, I just signed you up for student government. And I said, I don't want to be in student government. He said, well, you are now. So so for the last 3 years, I've served as a student director of We're Committed, which takes responsibility over the entire anti-sexual violence movement on LSU's campus. And then this year, I currently serve as senior advisor to the student body president, Jason Batto. And I basically do what he tells me to do. So I sit on a bunch of different committees, Title IX Task Force, LSU Ring Ceremony Committee, Parking Appeals, IT Governance, Student Tech Fee, you name it, I'm there. But overall, I kind of wanted to just tell y'all in general what I've learned from my LSU experience, and I have a few bullet points about it. I'm very proud to say that this campus offers a place for no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter your gender, your race, your religion, your sexual orientation, your political view, LSU is a place that you can call home. And I'm proud to say that this campus has taught me to be confident and raise my hand in classes that maybe have over 500 people in them, to raise awareness for topics that sometimes may be really difficult to talk about, to prioritize my schedule, to professionally communicate with other students, my professors, or potential jobs, and most importantly, to understand that my idea may not be the best one in the room. So LSU has taught me some invaluable lessons that I will carry with me into the future. After I graduate this May, I will be attending Parker Chiropractic University in Dallas, Texas. Yes, I'm following Zach again. So I'm going to Dallas, and I'll be fourth generation chiropractor in my family. So my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my mom, and now me. So those are my plans. Thank you.
And And Camille was the 2017 homecoming queen. She didn't mention that, but she's done about everything on campus that you can do.
So for my journey, I originally started as a first-year student, so I actually am from Tennessee. I'm not from Louisiana, so big culture shock for me as well. And so a little bit about my leadership journey. I started in residential life as a desk assistant, and then I got promoted to lead desk assistant, and I won the first ever Desk Assistant of the Year award within residential life. And also in my first year, I won SWCR, which is the Southwest affiliate for university and college residence halls. I won their first year experience award as a freshman. And then I was also elected into my current role as RHA president, and I worked with my sister organization, NRHH, which is a service organization within my sophomore year. I was also on homecoming court my sophomore year, and then I was also reelected to my second term, which I'm currently in as RHA president. And because I was on homecoming student committee, homecoming court, I wanted to be on the student committee, so I did that last year. And just recently, I won the Regional RHA President of the Year Award, which will go to the national conference in May. And I sat on Dr. Alexander's Greek Hazing Task Force. And so some future plans for me, I'm actually graduating a semester early this December. And so I want to either do business school or go into student affairs. Me being an RHA has really grown my leadership and has really pushed me into a role that I think will be amazing for me. And so things that I've learned from LSU, it's really given me the opportunity to travel the country and develop my leadership and show me my passion for working with other students. I've learned so much from this campus, and I just really am so excited about the future and everything that I'll be doing.
That's great. Camille, I really appreciate your work and the other students on the Greek task force. That's not a task force many people would volunteer to be a part of because it's full of a lot of bad news and things that you have to do and a lot of pressure from your peers about what to do and what not to do. But that was a very difficult time and very difficult task force. But we really appreciate your involvement in that task force and all the work that you've done.
Camille, let me ask you a question, because the other Camille, I think I know the answer. So did you have a family tie to Louisiana?
Yeah, so my dad's entire side of the family is from New Orleans. My aunt actually is a psychologist here in Baton Rouge, so I do have some family ties here in Louisiana.
I was just curious how LSU got into the equation.
Oh yeah, I've been a Tiger from birth pretty much.
Very, very good. All that orange didn't bleed over on Tennessee.
No, definitely not.
Thank y'all both for coming so much. Do any of you have any questions for either of the two young ladies?
One day soon, I think Zach's going to be following you. I say one day soon, Zach's going to be following you. He already
is. Mr. Chairman. Yes. Comment. This morning I had the opportunity to hear Camille Faircloth speak at the Women of Distinction breakfast, and I just wanted to commend her on the excellent job she did and congratulate her on carrying forward her honor from last year and really inspiring a room of female leaders from all over Baton Rouge this morning in her remarks. So congratulations on that. You did an excellent job.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Next item is the approval of the minutes of the board meeting held on February 2nd. They've all been provided to you. If there are no questions, Mr. Moore, did you move adoption of the minutes?
I do.
Mr. Jacobs, would you second the adoption of the minutes? Yes. Are there any objections to the unanimous adoption of the minutes? Hearing no objections, that motion is adopted. We'll now move to item number 4, which is personnel actions requiring board approval. You have them in front of you. Are there any questions by any of the board members on the personnel actions under number 4? Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Chatelain, do you move to approve the board actions? Mr. Williams, would you second?
Second.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the personnel actions requiring board approval? Hearing no objections, that motion is unanimously adopted. Now we have reports from staff advisors and faculty advisors. We don't have a staff advisor report this month, but we do have a familiar face. Ken, come talk to us again.
Well, thank you, Chair Perry. Well, I appreciate that. I'll be very brief, even briefer than I was this morning. Council faculty advisors met, and we discussed some of the concerns of the faculty and some of the efforts that are ongoing, not only on main campus, but the branch campuses. I'm really glad to say that with our strategic plan initiatives and some of the other things that are ongoing, it appears like on most campuses, administration and faculty are working in synchronization as well as maybe in my 30-some-odd years here. So I'm very appreciative of that, not only as a faculty member, but also representing the faculty. Our three frameworks under the strategic plan are to support student success, and you've heard before about our general education restructuring into integrative learning. Second pillar is career excellence for both faculty and staff, as well as our students, and so the faculty, staff, and HR departments have been working on a lactation policy for main campus and also on parental leave. And we believe that if those are implemented appropriately, then those will spread to some of the other campuses as not only benefits for our employees, but also for guests and visitors that we have to our campuses. One of the newer initiatives is a Center for Collaborative Learning, and this will tie in both students and faculty as far as trying to increase a lot of the interdisciplinary efforts. In establishing a culture of service and operational excellence, then faculty development is obviously a major concern of faculty, and that fits very well with that framework for our strategic initiatives. And also the service excellence team will have different training sessions for staff and faculty, but hopefully we will instill all of those aspects that we really believe LSU to be, and we'll actually have every visitor, every faculty member, every staff member, every student to understand that, yes, LSU is the place to be, and you can also get a fantastic education while you're also enriching your cultural life endeavors. So with that, I thank you very much, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ken. Any questions of Ken?
I'd just like to comment on something. Ken, I appreciate the work of all the faculty. Reforming general education, it's easier to move mountains than to actually take on general education and change something that has been evolving into something that it was never intended to at the end of the day or the beginning of the day. But Harvard and Harvard attempted this a couple years ago, and they had to postpone what they were going to do, because it is incredibly difficult. And I don't know if, Ken, if you could just, your thoughts on something so momentous is really in the academic world, it is remarkable what our faculty has done in reforming our general education and collaborative learning.
I'm not quite as assertive because as the previous Council of Faculty Advisors representative that you all remember very well, but, and so in that case, I'm not stroking him in particular, but without the leadership of Dr. Lee, Vice Provost, then all of this probably wouldn't have coalesced, because he recognizes when he needs to be involved with general education, how far he needs to push the committee in actually developing our strategic initiatives in integrative learning, and when he needs to back off and kind of let the faculty discuss it. So we've got some really good leadership in actually moving all of our efforts forward within the strategic plan. And as a faculty member and a faculty leader, I sincerely do appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Next item is the President's report. Dr. Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you remember, back on December 8th at the board meeting, we recognized Dr. Ward Plummer as our new Boyd professor. And he wasn't available at that meeting, but I'd like to read this resolution recognizing Dr. Plummer for all of his academic success and his leadership at our university. Resolution reads, Louisiana State University Boyd Professorship Review Committee has determined, in accordance with provisions of Chapter 2, Section 2-14 of the Board of Supervisors bylaws and regulations, that Ward Plummer, professor in the Department of Physics and Astronomy at LSU A&M, has attained national and international distinction for outstanding scholarly achievements and contributions to the field of materials physics, and that Professor Plummer is one of the most internationally recognized and cited scholars in material physics with more than 360 peer-reviewed publications and over 17,000 citations, was recognized as having one of the top 100 papers published by NIST in the 20th century, and is recognized as one of the best surface scientists in the world and a pioneer of the physics and surfaces and interfaces. And Professor Plummer has an outstanding record of service in the field, including on the editorial boards of multiple major journals, including Physical Review, numerous external advisory committees, evaluations, as well as selection to committees and panels, including the Department of Energy and Chinese Academy of Science. And Professor Plummer has received some of the highest honors in physics, including being named a fellow at the American Physical Society and the American Vacuum Society, and has won the American Physical Society Davidson-Gerner Prize, the American Vacuum Society's Medar E. Welch Award, as well as some of the highest honors in science, including induction into the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and being named a fellow at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and at the prestigious National Academy of Scientists. And Professor Plummer has a strong reputation as an outstanding mentor and advisor, including serving on committees of more than 50 PhD students and hosting more than 30 postdoctoral graduates, in addition to his decades as a mentor and supporter of young faculty and researchers throughout the campus. And Professor Plummer's achievements while at LSU include his visionary leadership in materials science initiatives in the Department of Physics and Astronomy, and as director of the Institute for Advanced Materials, his significant and successful advocacy for the diversification and is internationally recognized by faculty in the department and the College of Science, and as an outstanding mentor and for advocacy for students and postdocs. His continuous significant grant funding and peer-reviewed publications and tremendous efforts towards excellent interinstitutional relationships with institutions throughout China, and the recommendation to confer upon Dr. Ward Plummer, PhD, professor of LSU A&M, LSU's most prestigious rank of Boyd Professor, has been endorsed by the Executive Vice President and Provost of LSU and by the LSU Board, or the Boyd Professor Review Committee, and by the LSU President. Now therefore, let it be resolved by the Board of Supervisors of Louisiana State University and Agricultural Mechanical College that Dr. Ward Plummer, PhD, is hereby designated as our newest Boyd Professor, effective December 8th, 2017. Dr. Plummer, would you care to come forward?
Usually there's applause, but everyone is stunned.
First, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your commitment to raising the prestige of LSU. I know you work very hard and you probably never hear it from us, but we appreciate what you do. I am very appreciative of being named a Boyd Professor. It's a very honorary position at LSU. For those who know me, I'm an activist. Status quo is not acceptable. Some people say I'm pushy. But I promise to you that the Boyd Professors now will have a single mission. That mission is raising the recognition of LSU on the national and international scene. That can be accomplished by them winning prizes, right? By them serving on international committees, national committees, and by doing nominations for other faculty at LSU. I wanted to especially acknowledge my dean, Cynthia Peterson. She's not here because she's recovering from surgery, but she's the one that did my nomination, and she has been a central focus in the College of Science to do nominations for our faculty outside of Louisiana. In the last few years, we have been very successful. One faculty elected to the National Academy of Science, 2 elected to the American Academy of Arts and Science, numerous fellows of American Association of advancement of science. And at the present time, there are 5 active nominations that came out of her pressure for all of us. So I thank all of you, and I thank her.
Dr. Plunger, I'd just like to say before you leave, on behalf of all of us in the board, I've known a lot of Boyd professors over the last 50 years of my life, and they are an extraordinary lot. And your incredible intellect and the passion that you've approached your research, and the fact that you have driven yourself and your colleagues to achieve more and more each year does us incredible. And thank you for all of the work that you're doing and for elevating LSU nationally and internationally in a manner that very few have done over the decades.
Thank you. We're all on the same page.
And I now like to call on Provost Kobeck to introduce Sasha Thackerberry, Associate Vice President for Online and Distance Education. And I knew we had the right person when Sasha Thackerberry told me that we wanted to have 30,000 students on campus and 30,000 around the world online. And she said, "Why do you set your goals so low?" I knew we'd found somebody who knew what she's doing. So Provost Kobeck.
Yes, well, I'm delighted to introduce to you Sasha Thackenberry. You saw this morning an individual in Jose who was looking at the traditional on-campus students, but one of the questions was, what are you going to do about adult learners? What are you going to do about disruptive technology? How are you going to manage the changing workforce? Sasha is the one that's going to help lead the campus in that direction. She was at Southern New Hampshire University, one of the largest online universities that's nonprofit. Again, we did a very vigorous national search. LSU needed to get one of the best people out there in the field, and I can tell you, having worked with her for the past several months, mission accomplished. I asked Sasha if you could come forward and just say a few words.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the great introductions. I'm just thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled with the amazing community that has been so welcoming. Everyone has been so supportive of innovation and taking next steps to really extend our educational offerings to more post-traditional learners and in new models and modalities to serve Louisianians. I'm still learning the nomenclature, so I understand it's Louisianians or Louisianans. And I was told that people don't use either. Really, you just say you come from Louisiana. So wherever people from Louisiana find themselves, and many more people who admire the institution but aren't from here. And that includes multiple kinds of credentials, multiple sizes, and in different fits for a variety of learners. So thank you so much for having me. I'm so proud to be part of your historic tradition, and it was so exciting to see the new Boyd Scholar up here, so I'm thrilled to be here.
Sasha, I want to say to King and to Rick, I mean, I can see, just like with Jose, that the caliber of talent that y'all continue to attract to put us on the cutting edge. And Sasha, tell us how many students. I know Southern New Hampshire was one of the early adopters and has really been on the cutting edge. How many students have taken online courses, and also how much, I noticed in one article, how much square footage y'all have as far as the staff just for online?
Yes, so Southern New Hampshire University, they count because they really do have an open access mission, so they have a lot of post-traditional learners. Their FTE, I think this past year was about 67,000, but if you count active learners, that's learners in the past 3 terms, it's about 100,000 students now. About 92 of those are fully online. They have another 3,500, 4,000-ish in their private liberal arts campus, which is a beautiful campus if you ever get a chance to visit New Hampshire, and another 5,000 in their purely competency-based education direct assessment programs. They have a lot of staff. So in the location where I was, we had about 1,500 folks, and this is just in the College of Online and Continuing Ed. So it doesn't include all the folks on campus. And then we have a very unusual faculty model where I came from. So they have anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 active adjunct faculty who are primarily practitioners, so primarily professionals in their field who also are teaching a course here or there.
Let me say I've seen Sasha's energy, and she's seen it done big, and it's exciting to have you on our team. So we are.
Thank you.
I think.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. My family's here. I signed on a house this morning, so
Amazing.
I'm in it for the long haul.
And it's, Southern New Hampshire University is probably in every state now. Is it in 50 states? Would you say that, Sasha? And internationally. And Michael Crow, the president of Arizona State, and I had a long conversation about this issue, and it kind of turned my head around on this. About 10 years ago, many public universities were not in the online arena, and we abdicated that online arena to for-profit private institutions that in many cases leave students with massive debt. They prey on low-income populations that don't have access, and they give them degrees that in many cases amount to very little at all. So the thing many of these students take away from has been clearly demonstrated by the 47% default rate on the for-profit sector, that we need to get involved in this, and we need to get involved in it, as Arizona State has done it, to address all the students who need, and adult learners who need a high-quality education. And why aren't we doing it and doing it the right way? So we're not abdicating this anymore. We want students all over the world getting an LSU degree, and we're going to do it and do it with high-quality faculty, high-quality programs, and high-quality customer service. And then we're going to dare the ones that are out there making a lot of money and doing very little for these students to even stay in the market when we're out there. So Sasha, that's part of the charge and challenge. Together, absolutely.
There you go.
So thank you, Sasha. I also want to, as you know, certainly recently with the news, provide a Greek plan update. As you know, the Task Force on Greek Life recently completed its efforts and presented me with a full set of 28 recommendations that will help us to improve safety and culture surrounding Greek life at LSU. I'd like to thank the committee, task force, the commitment, expertise. It was a long and involved process involving students, faculty, staff, alums, but one that serves as a critical next step for us. I'd also like to recognize Mr. Rob Stewart for his leadership and dedication in serving as chair of this task force. Rob, would you please come forward? Rob, this is not a task most people would have gladly jumped in on, but with your leadership, I think we have done this better than any other university that's been grappling with these similar issues. Certainly in the inclusive nature of what was done, the hearings, the meetings, the open meetings that you're dealing with, the press was there every time. And I'd just like you to comment on the progress that we've made and just how things look for the future as we implement these recommendations.
Well, I think things look good. I was really pleased with the support we got from all of the staff. We looked in depth at the university, looked at a variety of different things, not just Greek. We looked at all student organizations, and I think had tremendous input from our students, our faculty. We really engaged the alumni base around particularly the Greek system. You know, just to clarify, we largely found the other student organizations were pretty well run, certainly have some issues, but well run. We by and large felt that the Panhellenic sororities and the national Panhellenic fraternities and sororities were reasonably well run. Our issues were mostly in the IFC fraternities, and that's really where we addressed our recommendations to. I think we have a lot of things that are cutting edge, that are very in sync with what other people are doing elsewhere. But I think one of the things that distinguished us is the real emphasis on personal accountability. I mean, that's what ultimately has to change in the culture, is the degree of personal and organizational accountability, which has just been really lacking. And it's lacking everywhere, but I think LSU can be a real leader on that. And so I certainly want to thank President Alexander and Dan Lazelle for their support, and I think we've arrived at a good place for here. It will ultimately depend on the implementation, but I think we're in a good position to go forward and have a much more positive Greek life at LSU.
Any questions for Rob at this time? Rob, we've got a small gift for you I'd like to present you. If somebody were to ask me to take on that task, Rob, I wouldn't have touched it with a 10-foot pole. That's a tough task. After accepting the recommendations that the committee made, I also took the liberty in adding three recommendations. That hazing means expulsion and removal from campus, number one. Number two, that the chapters must provide access rights to houses in order to have social events that are scheduled with the university. Three, that we will secure the services. We'll secure the services of an outside expert to evaluate our efforts, policies, and organizations. And I'll also say that these policies have been developed along with consultation from the other peer SEC schools that are developing with us best practices, along with the recommendations that we've seen that have come out of Clemson and Florida State, as well as discussions with Ohio State and Michigan and other universities. These are indeed the best practices that you will see consistently applied throughout the Southeastern Conference, but also many major universities around the United States. Yes, there's resistance. There's resistance on both sides in this issue. But this has been a complicated issue, and it is, unfortunately, it got to the point where we lost Maxwell Groover earlier this year, and this has been needed. It's been a needed reform. It's needed adjustments, and the policies as we implement them currently are going to change. They're going to change the culture of what we do, and it's time for our fraternities and sororities to turn this narrative around, because the national discourse about Greek life is not good. And that ranges from New York City to Los Angeles, California, where we've heard from everybody, and the press and everybody. So it's time to show why Greek life is important for the right reasons, in environments that are safe for our students, to live, learn, and grow together. And this will take some time, but we are in the process of working with our peer institutions to make sure that Greek life is stronger but safer as an enterprise on our campuses that have such rich histories with our Greek systems. The next presentation is the board had asked to just get an update on what we are doing regarding Title IX, and I now ask Tom Skinner to present his team and to present the work that we're doing in addressing the Title IX issues, which is also an issue of national significance, as you well know.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before too long here, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Stewart, who's our Title IX coordinator across the university campuses. But before we go to her, let me just say that at the direction of the board and the president, I've spent the last 4 weeks visiting the various schools across this campus in particular, visiting with the deans and with the department chairs, swinging the hammer essentially and conveying the message that this board takes very, very seriously the protection of its students and the protection of its employees, particularly with regard to Title IX, sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and related issues, which have been in the news so much recently. Michigan State being the most recent example, obviously, but not the only example. But we thought it made sense to actually provide to the board and to the greater audience a brief outline of what our process is and let you see who runs the process, which is why Jenny is here today. We use Title IX as sort of a catch-all phrase. Title IX applies to students in particular, protects students in particular. It's incorporated into our Permanent Memorandum 73, which protects both students and employees from the same types of harassment, abuse, et cetera. So PM 73 really governs what we do here, but Title IX is the underpinning of it. Jenny runs the Title IX part of the operation. This is, for us, been about a 3-year commitment. The university had sort of an ad hoc approach to Title IX issues in prior years. About 3 years or so ago, the board and the president recognized that this issue was taking on increasing significance and required some dedicated attention on the part of the university. And so we built from scratch a Title IX office. We've hired Jenny Stewart. We've brought on Jeff Scott, who will be starting, I think, on Monday, a former FBI, former NCAA investigator who will be our chief investigator for Title IX issues. And we also use Title IX coordinators at each of our campuses. The chancellors have been wonderful to work with in that regard. All of this is to get to the bottom line, which is it's about the students. And Jenny, why don't you come on up and explain to the board how you work.
This couldn't have been more timely with the grateful addition of Jeff coming in on Monday. The extraordinary experience that he brings over 30 years in different realms of equity, we couldn't have found a better candidate. So I'll be happy to make the rounds with him when he arrives. Some points that I wanted to share with you about Title IX, as Tom mentioned, he and I have been riding the circuit, sharing with employees their obligation and opportunity to report concerns, for us to be able to intervene and to provide service to people in our community, students, visitors, employees, anyone who's impacted by sex discrimination. So in this way, we've had the opportunity, I counted up, since Tom and I have initiated at that council meeting led by the president, we've visited 17 different departments, schools, or divisions. And that message then is being emphasized as well by written syllabus language that will be provided, of course that's suggested to the faculty, about the opportunity to report and receive service, as well as guided bullet points that department leaders can provide to their staffs as well. We've also compiled a booklet that's provided to every party to a concern, respondent, complainant, material observer, about rights and responsibilities, the process, service, and support. This is not only for A&M, it's been provided to every one of your campus coordinators in electronic format so that it may be tailored to your campus communities with local campus and community resources. Training and education, in addition to our faculty and staff overall, we have a new requirement this year that the president, I, and our athletic director sign off individually that our student athletes, that our coaching staff, and our athletics admin all attest that we have met certain criteria for education, training, and knowledge in our athletic communities. And with that, we were ahead of the curve, that we were already implementing this before the NCAA requirement came out. It opened March 1st for attestation, and now 15 days in, we have every single coach, every single administrator completed, even those who joined on board last week. We have only 2 students remaining, and I'm meeting with them individually next week. So we'll be able to certify that before the end of March. We're also working on consistent data management with a decentralized process of investigation. Sharing of information can be a barrier. It can be not quite as timely as we'd identify. So on the heels of the student data management project, we are in line as soon as that hits go, that we will have a centralized Title IX case management process, sharing simultaneously with me, with our campus coordinators and investigators. That'll be not only for our investigation piece, but for adjudication for employees as well as students. Okay. Also learning today to partner with Ken on the interests in pregnant and parenting students and employees as well. So that's on my to-do list as of today.
Questions for Jenny?
Jenny, since the Me Too movement has come about, have there been increased cases of women stepping forward And secondly, is there one particular obstacle in the past that has deterred people from speaking up that y'all been able to resolve or remove in the process?
I think that's a great question. We have had people come forward, not only women. So to that point, realizing just today I spoke with one of my staff in HRM and who had reached out to a person, a party of a concern that was decades old. And her question was, why now? Are you just worried about institutional liability? And I said, that's a really good question. I would ask that too. I think that's very reasonable. People feel disenfranchised. So my staff member said, what document do I give her? I said, you don't. You engage in a personal conversation about why we think this is important, because why we think that she is important and her experience, and how can we help her? How can we validate what she's sharing with us? So yes, we have had, it's not a coming out of the woodwork en masse, but it's significant. It really is. And the fact,
I was just going to point out, before the Me Too movement, we really became aggressive on this issue 3 years ago, and we did see an increase in activity and complaints. But it was because when we started really investigating these and taking action, people said now they came forward because they thought something was going to be done about it.
Sure.
Instead of nothing being done about it except me complaining. So I think that we've talked about that. Jenny, if you comment on that as well.
Very good. I think that's true, because the woman who was spoken to today said everybody knew about this guy. If you went to this area, of course, but people laugh and dismiss it because of the knowledge of the academic value of whatever that person brought to the department. It was excused, oh, but that person is so-and-so, just excuse it. That's how they are, and we don't excuse inexcusable behavior.
Can I jump in and ask Chancellor Richardson, whose folks I visited with last week, what their reaction was afterward that you related to me this morning?
They said you scared the hell out of them.
The idea there is I explained that they don't let me out much, and when they do, that's why they don't. But that's really the message that on your behalf we're conveying, and that is, we don't care what's happened in the past in terms of how you've handled it. All that matters is how we're going to handle this going forward, and the way we're going to handle it going forward is if you as a responsible party learn something, see something, hear something, you immediately turn it over to an objective outside party, being the Title IX office or Human Resources Management. Don't handle it yourself. Don't try and handle it in-house. Don't put yourself in a position of having to judge your colleagues. Don't assume that you know your colleagues and what they do or don't do. And the hammer part of this, and what scared the hell out of them, I guess, is the explanation. We were talking about Michigan State, and the president there obviously was forced to resign, the general counsel was forced to resign. And my point to all of the deans and the department chairs has been, look, if either the president or I are being pushed out of the airplane for something that we should have known but didn't know, I can guarantee you that whichever one of you in this room knew and didn't tell us is going out the plane door with us. And that message tends to hit home. And I mean, the feedback, so going to Mr. McCollister's question, I think Jenny's response is right, and the president's response. In the past, nobody has believed that the administration and the board was going to take this seriously and would follow up and would actually act. And there's an intimidation factor, a power differential factor that exists when you've got a faculty member and a student, for example, or grad assistant. The message we're trying to convey by both words and action is, we are going to follow up on this. We are taking this seriously. Your voice will be heard, and we'll follow it through to its conclusion. So you have an obligation, but you also should come forward.
Tulane recently released a survey of the student body, and the numbers were off the chart. And I'm just wondering, have we surveyed our campus?
Yes. This is the third year that we're required to do an annual campus climate survey. We have switched providers. In the past, we used Everfi, which was a free provider, and we kind of got what we paid for that. So this year we have invested in utilizing the University of Kentucky survey that's been tailored to our campuses that will offer interpreted data as well as norming in the state and across the country to offer us some interpretation. We do have to do this annually, and we're hopeful that this year's instrument will provide significantly better data than that in the past. We had a 50% attrition rate across the LSU campuses for those who started because the instrument was so lengthy in the past.
Presumably, a report will be made to the board.
Yes, that is information that's made available. We are required to use the same instrument across all of the state institutions. So we're all using the same one, Southern, LCTCS, UL, and LSU. So we all do have to have the same instrument. All that information will be made available.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
And this will provide updates as the board sees fit in this area. And as you know, this is an issue that goes well beyond us and society. Budget legislative update. I think everybody knows that we're in the regular session. We worked diligently with our chancellors and others, and I'll finish with that, and going around the state and ensuring that we had op-eds and editorial boards and others with us to get them into a special session. And once we thought that we could get them in a special session, that they would solve this budget cliff that now we're dealing with. So we've gone from hoping to run a 100-yard dash, now we're in the marathon, and the marathon's just starting. We don't believe the budget situation will know the full answers to the budget until about the first or second week of June. We are confident that the legislature will come around and make the decisions and go back into the same deliberations they basically did the last 2 weeks, but won't do it until the end of May or the 1st of June. But we are in this situation together. I've provided you with some of the major bills that are out there that impact higher education. There are 1,100 bills, and we're paying particular attention to about 15 of them. We're really not concerned about the bill that says that you're allowed to shoot black bears if they're attacking you, and that is a bill. But we are the TOPS bills, other bills that impact. There are 2 hazing bills that will go forward on punishment for hazing and other things. Hospital update with Ochsner. Our progress in Shreveport is going well. We are doing it detail by detail with Ochsner, and we appreciate their working with us and their partnership with us. And there is certainly a high degree of trust between Ochsner and what we are accomplishing. I don't know if Chancellor Ghali, if you'd like to comment on our progress.
Thank you, President Alexander. As the President says, the progress is going quite well. It's you know, we're moving from the 50,000-foot level view down to a more granular view, which, as you know, the devil's in the details. And so we're working very diligently on both sides to make sure that the best interests of LSU are protected as we move forward. But the negotiations are going very, very well. We hope to have more details for you by the next Board of Supervisors meeting.
Thank you, Chancellor. And finally, as I mentioned, when we went around the state, we received a lot, and our chancellors presented along with me at all of our campuses from the Ag Center to Pennington to Shreveport to Eunice, and the turnout was outstanding. I mean, we had community members, the mayor at Eunice, and many of the city council members. Very pleased at the turnout, our faculty and staff. Basically a unification challenge accepted, that the challenges, as I mentioned earlier, like poverty, are LSU's issues. And we're the only one in this state that can tackle these issues for the state and do these in a way that takes advantage of all of our capacities, from LSUE to Pennington to our flagship campus to the $500 million that we generate in research-related activities. So we believe that this helped us gain a positive offensive momentum that we want to keep as a university. Our applications have never been higher. The editorial boards have never been more supportive of what we're trying to get done, and I think they've availed us and given us the opportunity to actually push harder with the legislature to make sure that they solve this problem and realize that this train is moving forward. And the legislature needs to either get on our train and help us solve these states and regions' problems, or get out of the way. And that was the message of the Challenge Accepted tour. I don't know if you, yeah, and you just kind of slide through those. These are on the various campuses. The crowds that we have were. We need to take pride in our land grant, sea grant, space grant mission. Today, we're worth $5.1 billion in economic impact across the state.
We could be the most important economic engine to this state because we're not going anywhere.
We're one of the best universities at getting the next generation of students from the current income patterns, which are the second quintile of income, to the third quintile of income. And it's time that we take LSU's role more seriously to solve our state's challenges, to address our state's problems. This is what land-grant universities should be doing, is addressing the needs of our state, our region, and our nation. It's a difficult and challenging mission, but nobody can do it in this state but us. These issues aren't going away. They can only get better with the work that we do for the next generation. And that's what you do each and every day. So this was also to really share with the state our strategic plan, and also the new economic impact study that I briefly mentioned. We do an economic impact study every 5 years. And the last one we did was 5 years ago, and it said we had $3.9 billion worth of annual economic impact. Today, it's $5.1 billion to this state. And the main campus, for example, is $2.8 billion. The New Orleans Medical School is $1 billion to the New Orleans economy. And so on, as you can see from this document that you have here. This economic impact plus 40,000 jobs, 20,000 directly attributable to the university, another 20,000 that rely on what the university does. Nearly 3% of the state's employment is directly attributable to this university. There's no other university that can say that, or no other university that can comprehensively tackle the problems of this state like we're prepared to do. And I'd like to thank our chancellors for putting these on their campuses and conveying the message, and everybody being on that train that's moving forward to tackle these issues, economic and social issues, that to get us out of being ranked 48th or 49th in these troubled areas, to get us into doing much more productive and better things. And we're willing to be measured by that. And we're willing to be held accountable to, are we helping this state get its way out of poverty? Are we helping our state become healthier? Are we helping the economic productivity of this state? That's our job. And there are few universities that can claim they're land-grant, sea grant, space grant universities. We're one of 17, which puts us in that upper first percentile of institutions that have this type of mission. So I appreciate the work that everybody did, and I worked with the editorial boards, and we generated a nice momentum around the state. I appreciate Blake Chatelain for wedging this idea on us that we need to get out there and present this university as the problem solver for this state. And it just so happened to coincide with our strategic mission, which is about making this place better, making the state better, making the region better in all these areas. So I want to thank everybody. The unique part of this economic impact study, as you see, is that we have broken down the economic impact of LSU by parish, right down to the parish level. Not just the cities that our universities reside in and our medical schools reside in, but the impact of our ag centers in our parishes, the impact of our graduates in these areas. So by parish, we can break down to show LSU does impact the lives of every citizen in this state. And it's not, you've heard this before, well, LSU's not in my district. Yes, we are. And show them this chart. Pull their parish out and tell them that, yeah, we're worth $16 million to your district, your parish, every year. So I thank our folks in economics and public policy for DEC and our other researchers. Many of our grad students worked on this as well. And we're going to be using this a lot. We're going to be using this downtown. We're going to be using this throughout the next year over and over again, because we're going to underestimate whether they remember it or not. We want them to say, we've heard this, we understand it. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a couple of pieces of business to finish. One, we have the adoption of 3 routine reports, one being the 2018 metric data study that has been posted onto our website. We have the 2017-18 second quarter consolidated report on personnel actions that do not require board approval, and the other is the second quarter audit summary report from FY18.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask one thing of President Alexander. I applaud the offensive that LSU take. I love it. I think it's been great, the messaging. But one thing about the legislative agenda with TOPS, you mentioned the 15 things we're watching, and with the great report we had on our recruiting and admissions and so forth, I don't know if it's appropriate to introduce it unanimously and vote on something as far as a resolution, or if you and the chairman would write a letter. But could we agree as a board, do you think, that the TOPS issue is the #1 item in the legislature, so that when parents start calling us, that you can tell them that of all the things in the legislature, LSU's #1 is to make sure that TOPS is approved, so when they make that decision May 1st, even though we don't have the thing, that they see the commitment of this board with all the LSU members and the alumni, that we are going to make sure that we'll do everything we can. Is that a message we want to send as a board, whether it's a state?
We could craft something. I would say the number one message would be just stabilize our budgets, higher ed's budget, and fund TOPS. They're not dichotomous issues. We've lived through 8 years where our universities were cut to fund TOPS, and there are members of the House that would just as soon do that right now. And I appreciate the governor's stance on this. The governor has held firm on not using higher education, cutting higher education, because everybody wants to fund TOPS. We want them both. That is the #1 issue. We want to have a stable budget. Don't cut our budgets, but we also want, for our parents and students, the promise that they've made, we want that fully funded as well. So that's the #1 issue, those two together. And the governor has held a firm line on that, and we really appreciate the stand that he's taken to say, look, a TOPS to nowhere doesn't get you anything. A TOPS to a funded university does, a funded college. So those together, see if we could craft something that this board...
We all get questions from people, and a lot of them are raising TOPS. That's the question we get. So if this board's position is stable funding and TOPS out of 1,000 bills and 15...
Out of 1,100 bills, that's those two things merged as one. That is the fight we're in right now.
Board members, comments regarding Mr. McAllister's suggestions?
I think it's
Scott?
Absolutely agree. Totally agree.
Is there any objection to the president drafting that and getting it so that we can prepare? Let me ask you, let me throw a little ringer into it. Should we include that we also urge the legislature to develop a plan for deferred maintenance for higher education because of the impact on universities and competitiveness long-term, without going into sources or specifics or anything like that? How would you feel about that? Stan?
I just have another observation. I think we need to urge the legislature come up with a identifiable stream of income dedicated to higher ed and hospitals.
They're actually going to go the other way, and that's what the Constitutional Convention talk is about, because we're already at 72% of the budget constitutionally and statutorily committed, and there's, right now in the environment, there's no way to increase the dedication, so they're looking at actually removing. You have thoughts on that?
Yeah, people want to know why. I think the governor had said, you don't want Alabama to take our students, or whatever his comment was. He's right. But look at Alabama's system. Every year, it's very easy. Every year, they start out with a trust fund that puts together about $140 to $150 million, which is about 11, 12, 13% of their budget, and protects it against education. So every year, Alabama, just give an example of a state, knows that they have X amount of dollars to start with. Can you imagine every year if you start and you know that you have, I mean, I had this conversation Saturday, and I've had it 100 times. But why we can't get to a point where we do that? Could you imagine if you had your mortgage and you didn't know till the 29th day of the month what you had to pay your mortgage? That's a competitive advantage. They're able to at least have some sort of plan. We need to do that. We need to set that aside.
But right now in this session, what I'm talking about is the message to the parents who have to make a decision on May 1st. What can we tell them?
I understand.
So they know that what our push is going to be in the next couple of months. As far as the bigger picture and the solving it, I don't know about, but my thought is what, King's seeing these parents, they're calling us and everything, what can we say is our priority and push this?
Before they make a decision certainly to leave, I would say that at the very least, it's going to be, they're going to find these resources just like they did last year. And I would ease their concerns about that. Remember last year, the problem was it went too long last year, and parents did make those decisions. Right now, our message to our parents is just, it's going to be funded, and we're here, and we already got a place for you, and we're waiting for you.
I'm just want to say, we want to say we're with you, and the board is that.
All right.
Just, you know, so that's what my point was.
Okay.
Is there any objection on the board to Mr. McCollister's suggestion to be drafted? We'll proceed and get that worked on and forwarded. Mr. Yarborough, would you move the adoption of those 3 routine reports?
So moved.
Mr. McCrary, would you second? Is there any objection to the adoption of the 3 routine reports under item number 7?
No objection. I would just raise, Mr. Chairman, just attention to the metrics report, because, you know, sometimes we just accept those reports and don't look at them. There's a lot of good information in there.
Huge amount of
I would just
information.
encourage all of us to spend some time looking at that. It tells you everything that you need to know about what's happening across our enterprise. So.
Is there any objection to the adoption of Mr. Yarborough's motion? Hearing no objection, that motion is unanimously adopted. Mr. Armenter, would you consider moving for the adoption of the committee reports and the work of this morning's committees that were unanimously adopted?
So moved.
Mr. Jacobs, would you second, or Mr. Moore, either of you second? All of those were unanimous adoptions this morning. Are there any objections to the adoption of the morning's work? Hearing no objections, those are adopted. Now, we have the meeting schedule for the next year that your dynamic, industrious chair-elect has helped put together with the staff. His original request to meet in San Francisco, Havana, New York City. As we broaden our recruiting efforts, we've had to scale back on just because of our budget. But you have it in front of you. You have, and I want to bring one item in particular to you. On the first board meeting in October, the meeting would be on Thursday as opposed to a Friday to facilitate some board travel arrangement issues.
Also a meeting to Shreveport.
And let's see, it's in,
January.
which is the Shreveport, Friday, January 25th, to Shreveport.
You, Jim.
We were in New Orleans this past, I think, over December, and so this year we're moving to Shreveport. If you want to scan this real quickly, guys, but we would like to adopt this meeting schedule so you can begin to construct your own personal schedules around it. Mr. Williams, would you like to move the adoption of that meeting schedule if there are no questions from the board members?
So moved, particularly Shreveport, Jim. That was for you.
Mr. Mallett, would you second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mallett. Is there any objection to the adoption of the proposed LSU Board of Supervisors meeting schedule for 2018-19? Hearing no objection, that motion is adopted. Let's see what else we have to do here. The next board meeting is going to be on May 4th. Now, we'll be here in the board office. At this point, with no further business, Ms. Johnson, would you move for adjournment?
So moved.
Very well.
She moves, and Mr. Ballard seconds. Is there any objection to adjourning and letting these good people go home? Hearing none, we stand adjourned.
Again, he pulled it out the last minute.
Yeah.
Once again.
30
Bobby, wait, you make it.
On the road.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on.